Hi there, everybody. It's nice to see you all. Thanks for coming. I'm happy that this is the place I get to do my debut talk with. Won't lie, I'm still a little bit scared, but all your happy faces comfort me. Thank you. And actually, preparing for this particular draft of my speech that I'm giving right now, I had so much trouble with it. I went through 5 or 6, I wouldn't even say trouble is the right word, but I did have to go through 5 or 6 different talks that I wrote up, and then I started it with all this gusto, but, I just couldn't seem to finish one of them. And finally, it was actually, I won't lie, it was 2 days ago. I finally just asked myself, just got very simple, what do I really want to talk about? What do I most want to share? What am I most passionate about sharing? And it just became super easy. It just became right there, just what I wanted to talk about. I'm jumping ahead in my notes here because it just feels natural, so sorry. But yeah, during those first 5 or 6, though, that I was working on, I was confused the whole time. I mean, that's why I couldn't finish them, I realized, because I wasn't just asking myself that one simple question about what is it that I most want to share with everybody. I was asking myself a lot of other different kinds of questions. I was asking myself, what will my friends think? What will my father going to think? What will you guys think of me as I'm standing up here? Silly questions. Can this 30 minutes of public exposure really change my life? What do I need to say to become famous? Then the other one was, is it okay if my talk has nothing to do with its title? Even that one was bothering me. And it just all amounted to noise, basically. It was just like, here's what I wrote. Buzzing thought bees squirting a cloud of thick black smoke behind them. That's what all of these thoughts, these other questions were doing to my concentration. And then finally, 2 days ago, when I finally decided to put aside all these questions and about what I wanted it to look like and just went with that excitement, that enthusiasm to share. Once I put aside the need to hide and protect myself and just ask myself that question. Like I said, that's when I knew exactly what I wanted to say. And my talk, I thought at the time, was ready to write itself. But over the 2 days, I realized I had to re-inspire myself again and again and again to get it finished. But it was a very good start, for sure. And I kept that process going the whole time. And I decided what I'm most excited about and that I most want to share is my invisible friend. Sometimes I have a lot of different names for him, and I think we all have different names. Most of the time I think of him as the Christ or my higher self. But again, he doesn't really have a name. And he doesn't even have a gender. My angel. I once had a vision while I was meditating of just, I don't want to sound sexist here, but the most beautiful female. It was an angel. And she came to me right after I had admitted something to myself that I was trying to repress and deny for a long time. And the instant that I'd finally admitted that I needed help, I just was overcome with this just beautiful angelic presence, like exactly what I needed at that time. And it told me, okay, now you are ready to finally heal. Like it was just waiting for me to admit it. And then my friend was ready there. Once I admitted that I was broken, ready to be picked up again. So yes, this presence, male or female, is my friend. It's the unconditionally loving aspect of myself that I've come to know more and more over these past years. Of course, I didn't always recognize it through my life, but it's obvious that it's been watching over me, as it's obvious that it's been watching over, of course, all of us. These loving thoughts in the back of our head. These inspirations and joys that we all have throughout our life. Speaks to us in many different ways, through music, and stories, movies. From the very beginning, I realized it's been talking to each and every one of us. Yes, this is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about this friend because he's so real to me. Thank you. Thank you, sweet friend. I'm not done. I'm just... It's this utmost thankfulness for my divine companion. He's pulled my mind out of more graves and addictions than I care to count. And who's still taking me in further into our golden world of promised abundance, past all the guilt thoughts and the worthlessness in my mind. Yes, there's no doubt of it. This is the friend I want to talk to you about today. When I was 16 years old, I was very confused. How about you? So anyway, I think this is a pretty good place to begin the tale of true friendship. So yeah, when I was 16, oh man, some things I don't even want to admit to right now. Anyway, there was one particular night that I'm specifically referring to that I just felt like I was drowning in fear. And personally speaking, I've never grown up being very comfortable asking anybody for help. I always want to do it on my own. I always want to prove it to myself that I'm very tough. But this night, it's like I just hit the wall. I had put myself into a nightmare, and I needed some help out. I can't even remember exactly what it was anymore. It was so many years ago. But I just know I was filled with this certainty that I was pathetic, incapable of being happy for the rest of my life. You know, sometimes there's conclusions that teenagers can make about themselves and that we can still make about ourselves. And that's what I was doing. And so, drowning in fear, and that's when I got on my bed, and I just got on my knees and my arms, and I just prayed that if God really was real, that he prove himself to me, that he give me a sign. Or I just wasn't interested anymore. I wasn't interested in a God that would bring no comfort to his child. And I just felt like I was at the last straw. And you know what? That night, I didn't hear anything. I didn't get any sign. I actually even put on a black hoodie, I remember, because it made me feel better. It felt like in the hoodie, I could shut off emotionally and hide. I jokingly refer to it as my one-night stand with a goth. But anyway, the pain I felt about whatever conclusion is that I had made about myself at that time, it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like absolute shit. I felt miserable enough that night that I, not for the first time, considered, albeit briefly, I don't want to scare anyone, the option of ending my life. I went to bed that night, like I said, and prayed. And you see, my dad's a Lutheran minister, so I grew up surrounded by these images, this faith. And so I grew up as a believer, believing in God, whatever that meant to me at the time. And I read the gospel that my father used to preach upon on Sunday mornings. But I always had my questions. And as I got older, I was more than willing to doubt. what my dad had been teaching me, the sacredness of the Bible, the divine, inscrutable truth within its pages. To me, I was beginning to realize that maybe it's just all stories and maybe it's just all myth, and I was seeing past that facade. But no matter whether I believed in God at certain times or the Bible or whatever it was, being a child, I was still always drawn towards role models. I loved reading and watching biographies on Gandhi and Martin Luther King. To me, these are like the legends of the human race. These are the stories I love to hear. People like Jim Henson and Mother Teresa, who just gave such extraordinary gifts to the world. Their lives, their trust, their fire. And these were my role models, my heroes, committed to a cause to the very end. And I wanted to be committed to a cause too. I wanted to find out what it was I could give my whole life to. And as I looked around for it, the best use of my allegiance, my time, it always seemed to come back to the teachings of Jesus Christ. I mean, I couldn't get away from this example of perfect love that's inspired millions, billions of individuals, and some of the best people I know, to follow their inclinations to be their brother's keeper, to be love. And it wasn't really the man that I was so much interested in, but it was the message that he was preaching. He was preaching unconditional love, radical forgiveness. He had this idea of magic even, a kingdom of heaven, a utopia that we can't even see except for reaching out to our neighbors and loving them as ourselves. Yes, this is something I could get behind. And it was to this ideal of a God that loves his child so much that he would do anything to save him. This is why I prayed in my bed, "Please give me signs so that I may know you are with me." And when I woke up, like I said, I didn't hear anything that night, but when I woke up, I felt better anyway. You know how sleep can just sort of snap you out of it by itself. I love what I wrote. Sometimes I get embarrassed by what I write. It was a one-night stand with a goth, but I didn't let her stay the night. And subsequently, I kind of just forgot about my prayer. I mean, not saying it, of course, just the desperation behind it. But the receiver of my desperate plea didn't forget about me. 2 evenings later, as I was drifting into sleep, that state, semi-conscious state between sleep and wakefulness, I had a vision. All around me was this city of gray. And I could see for miles. It was like New York City or something. Nothing but gray, lifeless buildings. And I couldn't help but feel as dreary as the city I was looking at. There was just no life to it. And after I fully realized the despair of this place, above me, floating through the air, I both felt and saw a being of dazzling color and vibrancy. Colors so rich and powerfully alive that at the flick of his wrist, the city below him was becoming instantly bathed in colors. It was equally rich, bright, and enlivening. The whole thing was like psychedelic, very bright colors just lighting up the entire city. And the light and the color, and most of all, the aliveness, was what I remember most. Metaphor in my head for the whole experience, it was like I was seeing like the Renaissance spreading throughout a city and just completely transforming it. And then I looked towards the being, and I mean, I don't remember. It's not really that important, but he either said or I just felt in his presence this message he said to me. He said, just as this city was revitalized, so too would my mind be by the power of God. And I believed him. I was ecstatic about that dream for a long time. I actually didn't tell anybody about it just because it didn't really seem appropriate to. I mean, I actually tried to hold on to the date that it occurred on for a long time. It's kind of like my born again anniversary or something, but I forgot a while ago. It's not important so much now, but what I'm trying to explain is that it was very important to me then. I feel like God had given me some clear proof of his existence in the most spectacular and clear revelation. And that some heavenly force cared enough about me to answer my prayer. It felt that good. But don't get me wrong, there's still a part of me that remains skeptical, and still does today. I actually love skepticism. I think it's essential. I may have just been dreaming. That easy. I saw what I wanted to see. And yet, despite that possibility, I'm happy to say that I listened to that promise anyway. I had been given a promise, and I'd be damned if I wasn't curious about it. Whether the promise had come from my mind within me or someone else's, some external force. To me, really, the idea that I could conjure up such an impressive vision, the perfect image that I needed to feel good about living at that time, and living with hope and a purpose. So what if the perfect answer to my despair had come from me? What if it was just a dream? Frankly, I'm equally impressed either way. Impressed enough to believe in that colorful, vibrant man's power and promise no matter where he came from, me or God. And thankfully, my gratitude and continued contact with this presence did not end on that day. Not when I was 16 years old. I think it'd be really sad right now if that were true. It's like, God talked to me once when I was 16. I haven't heard from him since. Wasn't my hair. Seriously, the reason I'm up here today is because my friend, this presence that I attribute with God, with Christ, the Spirit behind Jesus, never left me. I've always found him here right by my side whenever I have the wisdom to look. And that's what's most important to me. Not the wake-up call that I had that night, but the afterwards that I looked. I stirred from my slumber in favor of the possibility, no, the promise of a better life. At that time, I devoured books on religion and alternative spirituality, and I loved reading those near-death experiences on the internet. They're so cool, aren't they? I was trying to collect information on this intriguing presence, this promise that I saw within my dream. And my beliefs changed about almost every month. We're going to go ahead and fast forward through the many different things I believe from 16 to 20 years old. Some of it was kind of scary, but most of it was just quite dumb. Really ran the gamut there. And the beliefs that were forming at that time were not so important in and of themselves so much as they were signs of a greater healing process going on within me. Signs of my willingness to have integrity with the truth, defining the truth, getting serious about it. And they were more like stepping stones. Each new belief, each concept was helpful as far as I used it to open my mind up to an even greater, unbiased truth. Truth, as I became increasingly convinced, was the truth being expressed by people like Jesus, St. Francis, Buddha. even Walt Disney, even Kermit the Frog, and Socrates. I'm wise because I know that I know nothing. And that just about everybody else knows nothing too. And technically this isn't really the truth, but I think admitting this is like a prerequisite to experiencing it. The admission that we've been mistaken about everything we've ever learned in this world. That might seem like a bold statement to make, but bear with me, please. We might get to it. And then even if we don't want to say that everything is a mistake that we thought, it's easy to admit that when we meet somebody, we judge them, and then we find out everybody does it, and then the more we get to know, the more our picture changes. So what was ever true, none of those pictures, not the first judgment you made, not the 27th judgment that you made, it was always false. It was always based on some sort of teaching that we've had, that we've learned in the past. And that these mistakes eventually pile up like dirt on a lens between our eyes and the truth. These mistakes are what are graying out our perception. These mistakes are what make the world, the city that I saw in my dream, make it gray. Instead of seeing vibrant colors, instead of seeing people for who they really are, am I really going to be satisfied with mistakes? See, our perception has been distorted by a deception. I started to realize, especially thankfully after reading the teachings of A Course in Miracles, it was very helpful in rapidly getting me to this conclusion. But a deception to get us to see ourselves as someone we are not. As weak instead of powerful. As little people instead of vast eternity, and as a body instead of the eternal spirit. And I realized around 20 years old, that's when I started really getting into A Course in Miracles. And that's when I discovered that I'd been actively involved in a conspiracy all my life to keep my mind in the dark from realizing its hidden power. For reasons that I'm only just now starting to comprehend, for most of my life, I realized that I had been in league with limited thinking. In league with the same force that was robbing the city of my dream of its color. The same force that causes me still to perceive my life as gray even now. And people and things as shadows of themselves. Objects to manipulate and consume, not to understand or to love. And through this admission of responsibility, that I was playing victim and allowing myself to remain confused about my worth, I came to see the truth. That is my belief in limits, that was my only limiting factor in my life. If that's the case, then I must also be the colorful man in my dreams who promised me restoration. That must also be my power. Not God, not Jesus, or some supernatural entity apart from me. Not Kent, but me, my higher self, my highest self, must be the hope, the inspiration that I've been looking for. I was the angel in my meditation who reached out to comfort me once I had finally admitted my desire to kill myself to myself. I'm the mind who decides to love myself or reproach myself. I'm the mind who decides to smile or cower in response to my coworker's arrival. I'm the mind who decides to feel or to suppress. I am the mind who has the power to choose. To see love or splash around in the black lakes of hate and greed. To bathe my mind in light. I had a picture of taking my brain and offering it to the light for healing, or casting it into the darkness. I am capable of both choices, light and dark, the sane and the insane. And the more I look towards that friend within me, that sanity, I know it's not going to leave me, because I know now that it is me, and that it is really, truly calling for me. And if it is calling for me and helping me in my life, there is no doubt on earth that it is calling for you. I don't even claim to be a Christian. I don't even claim to have any particular faith or whatever, but I feel cared for. I love you guys. And the more I look towards forgiveness and respect and integrity as the major guiding forces for my life, with my friend, my inspiration, a daily companion, you know what? I feel better. And the less I rely on perfect love, I feel worse. And it is and it always will be that simple. And that, my friends, is my tale of two voices. Thank you so much. Respect you all. Thank you so much. I love you. Bye.